Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into, well, a really extraordinary scene. It played out in a place so ordinary, it's almost unbelievable.
Tim Hortons in Canada.
Exactly, a Tim Hortons. And what we're hearing details this pretty surprising, intense face-off
Mm-hmm.
between Karoline Leavitt, former White House press secretary, very America First stance.
Right, that focus on domestic concerns above, well, pretty much everything else.
Yeah, and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. And this is all happening with, like, regular Canadian folks just there getting their coffee.
Just trying to have a normal morning.
Right. So we're going to get into this event, the tensions behind it, this clash of, really different worldviews, it seems.
Yeah, fundamentally different.
And the reactions it stirred up, which were apparently quite strong. This isn't just, a quick argument. It really tells us a lot, I think, about national identity sovereignty.
And those tricky dynamics between neighbors, right? Especially these two neighbors.
Definitely. It's fascinating how this, like, totally accidental meeting gives you such a clear snapshot of these big issues.
It really does. It wasn't some planned debate stage. It was just, boom, an unscripted clash in a place that's so Canadian.
Yeah. The heart of daily life, almost.
Which makes any kind of insult or slight feel way more personal, doesn't it?
Totally.
Okay.
So, picture the scene. A busy Tim Hortons. And you got to understand what that means in Canada. It's more than coffee.
Oh, yeah. It's a cultural touchstone.
You've probably got the Maple Leaf flag somewhere, maybe a hockey game's on the TV, that background buzz.
The smell of coffee, donuts.
Yeah. And the sources paint this picture, office workers, seniors hanging out, staff in those red aprons. It's got that community feel. It feels like Canada.
Definitely.
And there, at a table, is Prime Minister Mark Carney. Looks sharp, suit and all, but seems relaxed, small coffee, and he's chatting with Mark Critch.
Host of This Hour has 22 minutes. Great show, very sharp political comedy.
Right. They were apparently just finishing up, like a lighthearted interview, maybe poking fun at Carney's finance background.
Probably. Critch is good at that.
And they're even joking about roll up the rim, the contest.
Especially for Canadian, yeah.
And the conversation also touches on those U.S. tariffs from a while back, the political pressures.
So that tension is already kind of simmering under the surface, even in the jokes.
Exactly. And that choice of setting, the Tim Hortons, it's not just background noise. It really frames everything that follows around everyday Canadian identity.
Makes the stakes feel higher, more personal for everyone there.
Yeah.
That mix of roll-up-the-rim chatter and trade worries, it sets the scene perfectly for the disruption.
And disruption arrives. Big time. The door opens, and sources say this quiet just falls over the place.
Uh-oh.
In walks Karoline Leavitt. And you can almost, feel that America First confidence coming off her, and prioritizing U.S. interests above all.
That particular swagger.
She's with the U.S. ambassador, who apparently seemed, well, a lot more reserved. Maybe a bit uncomfortable even then.
Interesting detail.
Whispers start up, "That's her," from the White House. Leavitt spots Carney and Critch, and there's this. The source calls it a predatory smile, like she sees an opening.
Ooh, not a good sign.
Carney, plays the diplomat, stands up, polite handshake. And Critch, he jumps in with a very Canadian offer, grab a double-double.
Ha, classic Critch. Trying to lighten the mood, maybe.
Got a little chuckle, but Leavitt's smile is apparently pretty tight. Then she orders a latte.
A latte. In Tim's.
Yeah, the source specifically notes it felt kind of out of place. The ambassador gets a black coffee, trying to blend in maybe.
Trying to be low-key, yeah.
And then Leavitt just drops it. This really condescending line about Canada being just America's backyard.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is. The whole place goes silent. You could cut the tension with a knife, apparently.
That's the spark right there. It's not just casual. It's a direct hit on Canadian identity in that specific place.
In their spot.
You can imagine the hockey game sound maybe fading out on the TV, just this stillness. Immediate offense.
And Critch, ever the producer, apparently waves his camera crew over straight away, starts recording.
Of course he does. He knows TV gold when he sees it.
Reportedly muttered something like, "Oh, this is going to be good." So now the stage is set for the main event.
The core conflict.
And it really boils down to Leavitt's pretty blunt claim. Canada is America's sidekick, totally dependent on the U.S. for trade, security, everything.
A very dismissive framing.
But Carney steps up. His replies are described as measured but firm. He really hammers home Canada's independence, its history.
And he brings up the War of 1812, right?
Yeah, it does, yeah. And Canada is standing as its own nation.
Yeah.
And Critch is there, watching, sometimes poking, capturing it all.
It's that clash of worldviews laid bare. Leavitt's America First lens just sees Canada as secondary.
While Carney's defending this distinct, independent nationhood.
And that War of 1812 reference is key. It points directly to a time Canada literally fought off American expansion. It's not just rhetoric.
Not just rhetoric at all. Okay, so let's dig into some of these clashes. Sovereignty first. Carney strongly defends independence since 1867.
Confederation, yeah.
Directly counters that sidekick comment with the War of 1812 point. And Critch apparently pipes up with a line about burning the White House.
Oh, Critch. That would get a reaction from the locals.
Apparently it did. So yeah, the clear contrast. Carney asserting independence, Leavitt viewing Canada as subordinate.
Carney's using history strategically there. It resonates with that shared Canadian understanding. And Critch's joke, it kind of reinforces that separate identity, even humorously.
Then the economy. Trade. Remember the tariffs they were joking about earlier?
Yeah, they come back into play.
Leavitt brings them up, says Canada's economy would buckle, they'd be begging for a deal. Pretty confident tone.
Okay, so how does Carney counter that?
It's interesting. He doesn't just defend. He mentions Canada's own retaliatory tariffs. Names bourbon, steel, consumer goods.
Hitting specific U.S. sectors, right? Smart.
And he points to Canada building trade ties elsewhere, like the EU and Japan. Diversifying.
Okay, not just playing defense.
And then, here's the kicker. He mentions Canada supplies about 34% of America's crude oil.
Wow, that's a big number. Leverage.
And even casually drops the idea of Canada maybe selling off some of its U.S. bond holdings.
Ooh, okay. So he's showing Canada has economic teeth, too. It's not just about tariffs, it's about energy, finance, the whole interconnected system.
Exactly. Highlighting U.S. vulnerabilities, too. Leavitt tries to wave it off, we'll get oil elsewhere.
Which isn't that simple logistically.
Carney calmly points that out. Refinery infrastructure, practical issues. Then it shifts to global standing.
Okay.
Leavitt tries to label Carney a globalist banker, clearly meant as an insult.
A common political attack line these days.
But Carney flips it. He talks about his experience navigating the 2008 financial crisis, dealing with Brexit fallout.
Right, turning it into experience, leadership credentials.
And crucially, he frames it as protecting working people during those crises.
That's smart. Takes the sting out of the globalist tag and makes it about tangible benefits for ordinary citizens. Very effective.
Then Leavitt pivots again, goes after Carney's domestic record. Minority government, inflation rising, housing costs.
Standard opposition attack points in Canada at the time?
Carney responds, talks about investments in housing, clean energy initiatives, the government's plan.
Trying to provide context, defend the record.
And Critch jumps in again, apparently reminding everyone about inflation rates back in the U.S. under the previous administration.
Huh. A little political jujitsu there from Critch. Kind of levels the playing field on that point, momentarily at least.
Definitely diffused it a bit. But maybe the most powerful exchange was around unity, national identity.
Okay, this feels central.
Carney makes this really strong statement. Canada's unity, he says, is something America can't buy.
Powerful line. What's Leavitt's reaction?
Dismissive. Calls it a sham, basically. Predictable? Maybe.
Yeah, sticking to her script.
But Carney counters with examples. He mentions the Canada AI Hub initiative with Japan and the UK.
Ah, showing independent, forward-looking projects, not dependence.
Exactly, and highlights Canada's leadership role in NATO, especially up in the Arctic.
So, reinforcing that Canada operates independently on the world stage, has its own priorities and partnerships, that unity point really hits at a core Canadian value, a rebuttal to being seen as just an extension of the U.S.
Definitely. Now, let's talk about the turning point, when the mood really shifted.
Okay, how did it play out?
The source describes Leavitt's arguments kind of starting to falter. Carney's calm, factual responses seemed to be landing better with the crowd.
His composure was key, sounds like.
Yeah, and Critch was getting more openly supportive of Carney. At one point, apparently just declared, I'm Team Carney.
Critch picks a side.
And you could feel the crowd shifting, too. Those quiet murmurs turned into, actual cheers, applause for Carney's points.
The home crowd advantage kicking in.
And Leavitt seemed to sense she was losing the room. Got visibly frustrated. And that led to the final outburst.
What does she say?
Called Carney a failure, and Canada, the whole country, a joke.
Wow. That's crossing a line, especially there.
Big time. And the crowd's reaction was instant. Outrage. People started chanting, "Get out!" Get out.
A spontaneous, unified defense.
Yeah, really defending their country right there in the moment. Leavitt was apparently stunned, totally unprepared for that.
She misread the room badly.
She was basically forced to leave. And the U.S. ambassador with her looked, the source says, clearly uncomfortable. Mortified, probably.
I can only imagine. That's not a good diplomatic look. That reaction from the patrons, though, that's powerful. It wasn't just Carney defending Canada, it was the people themselves.
Absolutely. Ordinary folks standing up. And even after she left, Carney didn't gloat.
What was his message?
Kept it focused on unity, called for strength through pride and unity, not anger.
Classy move. De-escalating.
The crowd loved it. Huge applause. And then someone apparently started a spontaneous toast to Canada, right there in Tim Hortons.
That's amazing. Really symbolic. The whole thing happening there, ending like that. It says a lot.
It really does. A potent symbol of Canadian resilience, identity, all unfolding over coffee and donuts.
So the immediate aftermath is this powerful moment of unity. What happened next? The media fallout.
Oh, yeah. It blew up. Huge media frenzy in Canada and internationally.
I bet.
CBC News here praised Carney's performance. National Post called it a masterclass in leadership. The Washington Post, stateside, was pretty critical of Leavitt, called it a diplomatic misstep.
Sounds about right. Any pushback?
Well, outlets like Breitbart tried to paint Carney as this arrogant globalist elite. But that narrative didn't really seem to stick much in Canada itself.
Interesting. Didn't resonate.
And of course, Critch.
Yeah.
His segment on This Hour has 22 minutes. They called it the Tim Hortons Takedown.
Perfect title.
That went viral, shared everywhere, talked about constantly. Became a real cultural moment, cemented the whole incident in the public mind.
So the media didn't just report it, they amplified its significance. It became more than just a spat. It tapped into those bigger narratives about identity and leadership.
Exactly. It sparked genuine conversations about what it means to be Canadian today, how Canada relates to the U.S., to the world.
Right, not just drama, but substance too.
So when we boil it all down, what are the takeaways? Pride and strength, really.
Canadian pride and strength, yeah.
This whole Tim's showdown, it really highlighted Canadian unity, that resilience when faced with feeling belittled.
And you saw those contrasting styles so clearly.
Yeah, Carney, steady, principled, measured. Leavitt, loud, confrontational, dismissive.
And maybe the biggest takeaway is the role of the everyday people there.
Standing up for their national pride right there on the spot.
It shows that identity isn't just politics, it's deeply personal and collectively felt. That response from the patrons says it all.
So as you think about this whole thing,
Yeah.
what does this crazy incident in a coffee shop tell you about national pride itself?
And those often fraught dynamics between close neighbors.
Yeah, and how sometimes really important moments happen in the most unexpected places. What does it say about how a nation or just people in a coffee shop respond to feeling disrespected?
And what does standing up for your identity even mean in this interconnected world?
Just something to think about.